Hi, let's start with today's video lecture. Today's video lecture is on the labor market equilibrium, and basically um, we are going to bring the demand and supply together in a traditional demand and supply model, which is a very simple model actually. In that sense, today's lecture's main topic is, in my opinion, very simple. At the rate that I could even ignore this topic, but still, um, to understand labor market equilibrium in past, my students told me this lecture was still useful, and of course, well, in coming lectures, we will build upon the labor market equilibrium model. So I kept this lecture, but pretty much, I'm also teaching ECO 210, Introduction to Economics, Macro and Macroeconomics combined. There is something added to supply and demand model here, but that something is, in my opinion, very limited, except the background part. I try to put some information, some interesting information in the background part here, since main part is simple. Anyway, maybe the most interesting aspect of the labor market equilibrium is the labor mobility. I mean, it is assumed that in the traditional markets that the suppliers and the demanders or buyers and sellers are able to wander around and see each other everywhere. So the question we could ask, to what extent this is true for the labor market, and in that sense, I mean that can be true in that question can be asked in two different ways. First, to what extent this is true for the geographic locations, not only international geographic mobility between geographic locations, but also national mobility. Well, to what extent someone who's in Istanbul will find a job in Mardin or Konya or Rize and work there. Um, but in Turkey, Istanbul is kind of a place of attraction, although. So if you ask the question in reverse, to who from Mardin, Konya, or Rize would like to work in Istanbul, maybe more people will say yes. Although in other places, for example, in the United States, we could ask the same question for Los Angeles, New York City. Both are big cities. I mean, to what extent it's possible for a person to find a job in Los Angeles and just go there, or in Europe, find a job in Berlin and go from München to Berlin. In German, it's called München. In Turkish, it is Munich. I don't know how it is called in English. So, I was in between those two options. Anyway, this and the second type of mobility is mobility between sectors, and I mean, of course, and occupations. Of course, I mean, if I am a skilled labor, if I'm an engineer, probably I would not be able to work as a doctor. Probably, I mean, almost certainly, with some small exceptions where maybe I can get a small training and really work in areas where even this small fundamental medicine training is useful for increasing health, let's say, outcomes of the region. But also, if I am an engineer, mechanical engineer, that has worked for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years in the aerospace engineering sector, can I easily transfer to the, for example, energy sector, on which I could also start working after I have graduated as an engineer? Actually, I'm a mechanical engineer, so I have every right to work in a factory, but to what extent it's possible for me to switch sectors and move from academia to a job where I can work as an engineer is a question. Of course, some mobility exists, but to what extent that mobility exists and to what extent it should be encouraged also, it can be a big question. And just like in case of the times, actually, this achieving this type of mobility can be in some cases one of the goals of the ideal labor market, at least for the unskilled labor force. I mean, not locking different segments of unskilled labor force into certain sectors. So I mean, workers can work in the sectors which demand labor. Of course, that also means that for the workers, unfortunately, they won't have necessarily a stable job. If they cannot have savings and some money which allows them to sustain themselves while they are looking for a new job, I mean, not having a stable job and constantly being in search of a new job is something not that pleasant for the workers. Anyway, we won't deal with this intersector mobility. We are dealing, I mean, in this video clip, actually, we are looking to the regional mobility. And the video itself is actually mobility of Turkish workers to Germany, and basically the summary of basically the initial days of this mobility, and then the problems that are caused by this mobility, which also shows kind of this additional dimension how labor market is connected to the other social issues, and basically it is really not easy to separate labor economics with other extra economical aspects. I mean, extra economics means it is connected to economics, but it goes beyond economics also. So watch the video and think about it. And this week's discussion is also on the labor mobility, and you can think on your argument on this topic. There are other videos on other examples of labor mobility also, so it's not only the Turkish workers working in Germany. So let's continue. So basically, if we try to simplify it in the extreme sense, we have buyers and sellers, and we assume that in the when we are trying to create a market, and those buyers and sellers are giving independent decisions. They don't know what other people decide. They don't know also each other. The buyers don't know the buyer doesn't know the decision of the other buyers. The sellers also don't know. While they make their decisions, while they form their preferences, they don't know or they don't care. Those preferences are there, whatever the conditions, other social conditions are. And then they meet together. But once they meet, they know each offer made by all actors. So they know at which wage each buyer each seller, in that case worker, is willing to work, and at which wage each buyer, in that case the employer, is willing to employ that worker. So this is a real world part of this thing. I mean, in contemporary world, the buyers and sellers in the labor market might meet at they meet through career fairs, they meet through employment agencies, they meet at a physical marketplace, they may meet through newspapers and website ads, through friends and relatives who know both buyer and seller. Physical marketplace is there's a famous Turkish movie scene where you have this construction working, the guy coming from a construction site, and they say we need, for example, 10 workers. They take all the workers. There's a physical place in the city. They take the workers they want to take with them. They put it to the lorry and they go to the workplace. Of course, there is no negotiation of wage there. Sometimes they tell the wage. I mean, they say we need 5 people paid this amount per day. Well, it's actually interesting thing in Utah, Salt Lake City. When I was wondering, I think I am looking for like a Mexican, and Mexicans are usually relatively the income level of Mexicans in Salt Lake City are unfortunately low. So I had a guy coming with a truck and who told me, "Do you want easy money?" Something like that. Of course, I don't mind to work, but I mind to work illegally, and as a student, I wasn't allowed to work in the United States, so I refused it. Anyway, physical marketplace is an example of places buyers and sellers meet. Another example is career fairs. Usually, the students that graduate go there and meet with potential employers. As a PhD student, or even though I was not able to work in the United States at the time, I went every year to those career fairs to just see the environment there. So, except that newspaper articles and website ads and employment agencies, the website ads are usually, that's the case when the employers are telling we want to employ this person, and the sellers, in that case, the workers, they see it and they call those employers, potential employers, let's say. Employment agencies is the case when there are some agencies which are connecting the buyers and sellers. In some cases, state might even do that, especially for unskilled labor, where transaction cost finding an employer for a worker might be very high. And the one case is actually, but this is more common than you think. The friends and relatives might also connect the buyers and sellers. This is not necessarily the typical type of favoring, but basically, I mean, even in the private sector, it's not only for the state sector. Even in the private sector, usually, I mean, the buyer, the employer, wants to speak with someone who know the seller, in this case, the worker, to trust that person. And if possible, of course, that person who knows the worker should also be someone who he or she knows also. I mean, because that reference itself might be not that accurate. And this is also true for the academia market. I mean, in academia also, when you apply for a job anywhere in the world, not only Turkey or Cyprus, you need to send references. So even though we don't meet with them through the friends and relatives, in the end, the people who we know are essential to make us get the job. So all these things make actually the job search process complex, and we will spend a special lecture on this actual job search process, where kind of this model we see here will be expanded a lot, and we will see a lot of new conclusions, new aspects which are invisible in the model we will see today. Anyway, in very basic sense, however, the buyers are willing to find the skills and performance level of the workers to hire them, and sellers are willing to find the working conditions in a job they are willing to accept. And they are they don't necessarily trust each other. They especially the employer has more power to do that. They try to go deeper and make a more true investigation, if possible, to know the worker. I will talk more on this in the next part. See you in the next part.